It's tiny though.
Okay, so last time we dealt with issues of morality as it is presented in the Talmud. Last week we spoke about questions of euthanasia, if you recall, all about the end of life and things we're allowed to do and not allowed to do at the end of life, and the sacredness of life. We spoke about the story of Rabbi Hananya ben Tradian, if you recall, how he was being burnt on the stake, and students asked him to open his mouth. He refused to open his mouth because he says, I don't want to hasten my death. But at the same time, when the executor wanted to pull off the woolen tufts, that he shouldn't suffer that much, so the rabbi said, you'll receive a portion of the world to come for that. Okay. So he was so excited about that he actually jumped into the fire to get that portion very quickly. He didn't want the deal to expire. But regardless, what we learned from there was some kind of a compromise in the end of life issues, some sort of a balance between active euthanasia and passive euthanasia, right? In doing something which hastens the death, as opposed to taking away an external obstacle that is disallowing a person to die gracefully. So it's obviously not all so black and white. There is the code of Jewish law, and then we had different discussions about different aspects of that, how it relates to contemporary halacha. But we were all trying, this is a Gemara class, so we're sort of trying to see how the foundations, the seeds for all our moral decisions are based on a morality which we receive from the oral tradition, which is recorded in the Talmud. And by looking at the Talmud, we get a little bit better idea of it. So this week we're going to turn back the clock. This moribund guy, this euthanasia fellow whom they're pulling the plug, which we're moving him back 90 years, 100 years backwards in the time machine, and now he's being born. So now we have the opposite end of the pole. How do we deal with morality issues at the very beginning of life? Obviously, the most popular manifestation of that moral issue is the question of abortion. And we all know that recently there's been a very, very heated debate around the world all about how should we deal with abortion, and because there is always that question as to whether or not abortion equals murder or not. Before a child is born, it's just a fetus. What's the status of a fetus? How does that fall into that? What category does that fall into? Right. There's a big question as to when does life start, right? So when does life begin? One person said it's at conception. Another person said, no, life begins at birth. And the other one says it's when you marry off your kids and send them out of the house. That's when life begins. That's how we solve the problem. Yeah. But the question is, where does life begin? And obviously, the best place to look at that would be also in Torah and in sources and in the oral tradition to get an idea as to when life begins. So we're going to look a little bit at some of the sources. One source that I've shared with you was in the tractate Sanhedrin 72. I think it's 72. And we'll open that up and we'll look a little bit at that. Because today the big famous ruling out of the Supreme Court, which came out, I don't remember when, the 1960s or whatever, was the famous case of Roe v. Wade. Roe versus Wade. Yeah. So that was also a very famous case, and they came out with what is considered sort of the Bible of abortion, how to deal with abortions, and they divided it into 3 trimesters. They came up with the first trimester is very lenient, second trimester a little lenient, and the third trimester it's more or less forbidden. Okay, so that's the way they decided. Exactly how they spinned the wheel on that, how they figured it out. It's hard to say exactly. Maybe it's based a little bit on the scientific evidence of what they had of where the child is at the different parts of the pregnancy. Or perhaps, it was, where does it come from? So I think after we will study today a little bit the Talmud, we might get an idea as to where these ideas come from, because everything starts earlier. And probably the one that could tell us most about where life starts is probably God. He could tell us when life begins. And how do you define life? In any case, no one can deny the fact that there is some form of life already from the very beginning. Something inside mother's womb that's growing, and at some point there's even a heartbeat. At some point there's the only thing that doesn't happen is breathing till the very end. First breath that's taken of the child is if the child is born, the child takes his first breath, fills his lungs with air for the first time. But every other form of life is already there way before. So how do we figure this out? It's a very, very complicated thing. And look a little bit, we'll see what the Talmud has to say about it. So let's check it out. And you be the judge. Okay? You be the judge. So let me see. If you have your papers, you'll take them out, and I'll take out page of the Talmud, and we'll do our usual ritual where we look at a little bit at the page just to get a little orientation of a page of the Talmud. So here we go. I see it there.
Yep.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see it. Okay. I'm gonna make it a little bigger so everyone can see it here. Okay, so first we'll take you to the top of the page over here. If you look on your own page, you'll see over here. Since you are such Talmudic experts, I will ask you to help me out to tell me which tractate are we looking at just by looking at the page, top of the page. Anyone?
Sanhedrin.
Very good, Edna. You've become pretty much an expert at this. Which chapter of Sanhedrin are we looking at?
8.
How do you know it's 8?
Perek Shmini.
Well, Perek Shmini, it says this right in the middle. Right in the middle, yeah. Give you the pointer right there. You see that? Perek Shmini. See where I'm doing the pointer? Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the name of the 8th chapter of Sanhedrin, Edna?
What's the name? Ben Sorer. Sorry, it's gone small.
Ben Sorer. You got it right. It's right up there.
Umorah.
Umorah is the case of the rebellious child, rebellious son. But there's a whole section of the Torah that speaks about a child that's rebellious, and the parents bring the child, straighten him out of it, and bring him to the Beth Din. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's in Parshas Kiseitze, in the book of Deuteronomy. Okay, so but now I'm going to take you to the middle of the page of this tractate. So, Amora, you're following me, taking this up a little bit. So we're going to start where it says Amar Rav Huna. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, I think it's 13 lines from the bottom in the Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
Amar Rav Huna. You see that? The third
Yeah.
word.
Yeah.
Okay. Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna said, Huna was a big rabbi of the Talmud. Yeah, when I went up to in Israel, I was up in the Galilee in Tiberia. We saw over there the burial place of the Rambam. And we also saw many other great rabbis of the Talmud are buried up there. Yechem Zakai, there was Rav Ami, I don't remember, Rav Huna maybe. Different famous authors of the Talmud are buried over there near the Rambam. The Rambam obviously is like 500-600 years after these rabbis of the Talmud. So Amar Rav Huna says, what is Rav Huna? What are we discussing here? We are discussing the case of a rodef. Now, a rodef, just to give you a little idea of what a rodef is. I'm just taking you back here so I could see you guys. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. That's very important. So a rodef there's a special law in the Torah that says that a person is not allowed to murder. It says in the Torah, thou shalt not murder. But it doesn't say thou shalt not kill. Why is that? Why does it say thou shalt not murder? It doesn't say thou shalt kill. Because there are numerous situations where you're allowed to kill. So killing is not necessarily a forbidden act. When are you allowed to kill? I mean, I guess in certain permissible wars of self-defense, you're allowed to kill, right? For self-defense, right? The Beth Din sometimes are allowed to kill when there's capital punishment. Torah says you shall root out evil from amongst you. Torah speaks about killing the Amalekites. There are certain things which the Torah speaks about killing, justifiable killing. So the main justifiable killing is we say that you're allowed to kill for self-defense. Because your job is to defend yourself, and you have a mitzvah to live. And if someone else wants to take away that life from you, you're allowed to kill them rather than being killed, if that's what it takes. Obviously, if you can maim them, injure them, that is obviously preferable. But if you cannot get away with that, you're allowed to actually kill them to defend yourself. So somebody comes at you with a knife or a gun and wants to kill you. So the Torah says that you're allowed to kill them. In fact, not only if they're actually killing you, already in the process of killing you, but even if they are just in a mode of rodef. Rodef means they're running after you in hot pursuit to kill you. So a rodef, you're allowed to kill. Now the Gemara is going to discuss different kinds of rodefs, right? If an animal is about to kill you, you can kill the animal, right? Because rather than being killed, even though some people would rather save the bears, they say, how dare you kill a bear? Let the bear kill you, because save the whales, or whatever the movement is. So there are some people that say you have to save the ecology, save the environment, save the nature. So they say, rather say, who gives you the right to kill the bear? Well, Torah says that the bear is coming to kill you. You're allowed to shoot the bear. It's not something that you should do just like this, or hunting in general, just like hunt. But you're allowed to hunt for food, and things like that, right? There are certain justifiable killings of animals, etc. I mean, then you have a case where a human being comes after you to kill you. So that's even more than just an animal. So say you're allowed to kill the human being. Why are we allowed to kill the human being? Anybody? Any thoughts on that? Why would the Torah say that someone that comes after you, you're allowed to kill? Allowed to kill them. Maybe we should say, who is to say whose life is more important? Maybe let the guy kill you.
Well, if they're an aggressor, then
Then what?
you're allowed self-defense.
Okay. So you're saying the argument is self-defense.
Mhm.
What's the basis of self-defense? Because your life comes first? Is that the point?
Because you're a victim
Right.
and you're allowed to save your life
Right.
in certain
But you look at
circumstances.
it two ways. One way of looking at it is, like Edna says, your initial thought is that when someone is coming at you to kill you, you have a responsibility first for yourself, right? That's your job in life. God commands you to live. Thou shalt live. You shall live with them, right? That's a mitzvah for us to live. This person wants to take away that my possibility to live. That's what I'm created for. They're coming in my way, so I'm allowed to. That's self-defense. Self-defense means you can't kill just randomly, but if somebody's coming to take away your right to live, then you're allowed to kill them, right? Because you have your obligation. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is that someone that comes to kill you, what's happening at that moment is that you are acting as the court. You're saying now, because that person is now a murderer, so they lose their right to live. That's another sort of argument for self-defense, right? Yeah. That at that moment, well, why is that person's life less valuable than yours? Maybe you should let yourself be killed. Right? What are you gaining? The net result is going to be the same, but the answer is no. The net result is not the same, because that person is now a murderer, so they deserve to die. So they're one down on you. So if it's a choice between the murderer and the victim, you obviously take the side of the victim. I mean, you could say it's a combination of the two reasons that I said as well.
Won't they go kill someone else as well if they succeed with you? If you don't kill them, won't they kill someone else?
That's the point, that they're a murderer, right? So the point is that they're a murderer, so we need to get rid of them. We need to eliminate the murder. So they kill someone else as well. That's part of that same logic. But it's once they're a murderer, they're a danger to society, or they're a danger to themselves, so they're just a person is deserving of dying. Who knows? So it could be. So the question is it just self-defense that my job is to protect myself? So anyone that comes at me, I kill. The other one is no. They've now forfeited their right to live once they've broken the covenant of people and are coming at me to kill me. So they've broken that covenant. So now they are of a lesser person, or they are now subject to the death penalty, or sort of something like that, right? Or they can go kill other people. So therefore, they are worthy of being killed. What will be the difference between these two approaches that I'm telling you? And that's our piece of Gemara now. What happens if a minor comes to kill you? Yeah? If a child comes to kill you, what do we say then? Right?
Or if your wife says, "Over my dead body," is that
sorry about that. What if a child is the murderer? If you say the reason is for your self-defense, So it makes no difference who the other party is, right? But if you're judging that person and you're saying that they are a murderer, how could you say that of a child? They're not yet, you know what I mean? They're still too
You can look at what has happened on the TTC in the last few days, and you'll know.
Yeah, minors.
Mm.
Yeah, but generally, society will say that a child is not a murderer. You can put the child for death penalty or things like that.
Well, I think children who get tried for that kind of behavior get tried in adult court, because I think it's not age specific. I think it's more deed specific, isn't it?
Yeah, depends how young, I guess. When a child is let's say given by a parent to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't like their neighbor and they send the child. I don't know if you can really, Anyways, so the question is, this is the question the Gemara talks about. So let's go back to the text. I'm just giving you a little bit the lay of the land. This is how it leads. It leads into the issue of abortion. But let's just give a look about the idea of self-defense or being a murderer. What is the explanation for why the Torah says that a person that is about to kill you, a person's hot pursuit, that person is called a rodef. Rodef, The concept of rodef was actually a concept that was exploited by people who didn't really understand the concept of rodef. But rodef, some people say, applies also to a person who's putting other people in danger. I mentioned this because this was invoked by a very dangerous fellow whose name was Yigal Amir. I don't remember if you remember.
He shot Rabin.
The fellow that shot Yitzchak Rabin.
Yeah.
So he was a bit of a knowledgeable guy in Torah, and he claimed that Yitzchak Rabin, through the peace treaty, was endangering all of Israel, giving away the land to the Arabs, and he claimed that would put everybody in Israel at risk. And so the politician that made this compromise was really, in fact, endangering all of Israel, and thus he is considered a rodef. And the rodef in Judaism, we don't believe in vigilantes, but we do believe in the concept of self-defense, right? So he sort of extrapolated that idea, and he labeled Yitzchak Rabin with that term, rodef. A lot of people then at the time, I remember, were talking about what's a rodef, what's a rodef, what was he talking about? It's this Gemara that we're learning right now, so now you know where it comes from. But rodef is someone that is in hot pursuit, running after somebody to kill them. So you're allowed to preempt them and kill them in advance. That's sort of a preemptive self-defense. So the Gemara now discusses about if a child was in that position, God forbid, right? So I'm going to find the text again. I'm going to open share screen. I think it's there. Yeah, so there we are. If you count your 13 lines, Amar Avrohom. I'm gonna read a little bit of the Hebrew, and then I'll go back down to the English. Amar Avrohom. I'm going to point to it, so that way I don't have to count the lines. See that? Where I'm pointing?
Mm-hmm.
See that? Yeah. Does everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amar Avrohom. Avrohom says, there you go. Cotton. You see the word cotton?
Yeah.
All right. Cotton, a child who's a pursuer, you're allowed to save yourself with eliminating the child. God forbid a case like that. So from here we see Kasavar Avrohom holds Roidev Ein Sarach Hasira. that the roidif doesn't need to have a warning. Generally, in all courts, when someone does something, they first have to be warned and told in advance before the death penalty is exercised, whatever it is. They have to be told that this is a forbidden act, that they should know that it's forbidden. So here we see that especially a child that doesn't really even understand maybe a warning, somebody says stop, they don't get it. So he says leishna god leishna cotton, no difference if it is an adult, no difference if it is a child. And now I'm going to go just down to the English a little bit. There we go, down to the English. Okay, on the right-hand column, right over here, you can see it. Rahuna said, you got it? Rahuna said, a minor in pursuit may be slain to save the pursuit, right? That we learned from the Hebrew, right? Thus he maintains that a pursuer, whether an adult or a minor, need not be formally warned, because especially a child doesn't even understand the content of what you're telling them, perhaps. But regardless, that's the right. There's no time when somebody's pursuing. It's not a question of a death penalty of it. It's a question of it's seconds that you're dealing with, right? Mm-hmm. From here we see the pursuer doesn't need a warning in advance. Rav Chizda asked Rav Huna. So Rav Huna was the fellow that made this statement that a minor in pursuit may be slain. So he was asked by Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda was his contemporary, and he asked Rav Huna. He's going to ask him a question from the one Gemara, one Mishnah. It's a Mishnah actually in Oholot, chapter 7. There's a Mishnah that discusses about the mother and a child. We all know that in Jewish law, generally speaking, whatever side of the argument you're at, everyone knows that generally speaking, the Torah approach is that abortion is forbidden. Question is to what degree or when, under what circumstances, etc., etc. But generally speaking, just to abort the child is obviously something that's forbidden. But there are certain cases where abortion is a mitzvah. You ask, how is that possible? The mitzvah of abortion, when is abortion a mitzvah? So the Mishnah in Aholat says that's when the mother's life is in danger. When the mother's life is in danger, then the child forfeits its rights to live. So we learned as follows. I'm just going to read it. It says, once his head has come forth, that's the head of the fetus, he may not be harmed, because one life may not be taken to save another. So it's like this. So it's like this. One life cannot be taken as long as the child inside the mother's womb. Then we say if the child is putting the mother at risk, whose life takes precedence? Obviously, the mother's life takes precedence over the child's life. But the second the head of the child comes out and he takes a gasp, then he's considered already like a life, just like the mother, equal to the mother. So it says, because one life may not be taken, save another. Which life do you take? I mean, maybe the child is in a way more precious because the child has many more possible years. I mean, we don't say that, but you definitely can't say that which life is greater than the other, the mother or the child. So you can't do anything. All right. So here we see. So but you understand what's happening here. Rabbi Hizda is trying to bring a proof from this Mishnah that a child even though the child is here a pursuer also, he's putting the mother's life at risk. Right? And that's the Gemara asks, is he not a pursuer? Right? So the child over here is also a pursuer. So what's the difference between a child that's pursuing someone when they're on the street, or the fetus after it comes out and it becomes a living creature? We say we can't touch the fetus. Why can't you? Gemara asks, the child is a pursuer. He's pursuing. The mother was living a nice life till this child came into the womb, and now the child is threatening the mother. Comes out and still threatening the mother. So why can't we say that the fetus should sort of forfeit its right to live? So the Gemara answers the question. So Rav Chizda answers. Chizda asks Rav Huna this question from this Mishnah Holot, where it would seem to be that a child is not considered a pursuer. So why would Rav Huna say that a child is considered a pursuer? So he said no. He says there it is different, for she is pursued by heaven. Oh. Pursued by heaven means the child over here never made a decision. It was never a choice to go ahead and threaten the mother's life. The child was born into this, so to speak. So we say the mother is being pursued not by the child but by heaven. Why the child is not responsible for it in any way, shape, or form. When the child is running after somebody on the street, you could say, that the child has some degree of responsibility, or the person has a responsibility to protect themselves, so they're allowed to. But in this case over here, where the child we're talking about a fetus, so that's very different, because then it's the child didn't do anything. The child was just born into that situation that is threatening the mother's life. Give me a second over here. There we go. Okay, you guys are back. I lost you there for a moment.
Yeah.
Sorry, my share screen went jumping a bit. I just want to discuss. Some of you still have the Gemara in front of you, so you can see what's going on over here. So now let's just analyze first some of the things we just read. This is like a lot of bombshells over here for the brain that just came down from heaven. And the first thing is, we see over here an interesting case. When the child is still in the state of a fetus, and the mother's life is threatened, we say that the child is aborted to save the mother's life. However, once the child has put his head out, says, I'm here, I'm a person, we can't touch the child anymore. So now there's two explanations to that particular case. Why is it that way? Why is it when the child puts his head out, and suddenly we say, why is it when the child is inside the mother's womb, we override the rights of the child, according to this mission, all this. So Rashi says, Rashi is one of the commentaries. I'll show you the Rashi momentarily. It's a Rashi script, so it's hard for you to read it. But Rashi says, because the child before it's born is not yet considered a living creature. That's interesting what Rashi says, right? Rashi says that before a child is born, child hasn't yet taken a breath, so it doesn't have yet neshama. Neshama means when it breathes. That's what the word neshama means, breath, a breath-taking creature. Child hasn't yet breathed. So when it's in the mother's womb, it is inferior to the mother, so we need to save the mother's life. It's sort of like it's like a question of, what do they call it? When you bring someone into the hospital, which person do you save first?
Triage.
Triage. Thanks for the word. Triage. That's what it's like a triage situation. You have child and the mother, the child. Who do you save? Right? You're a doctor. You don't know what to do. So Rashi says it's the mother, thumbs up. Why? Because the mother is a complete living creature. The child is not yet quite there. You can't call it yet an effort. You can't call it yet a neshama. Before the child is born, the moment it pops its head out, takes a breath, it has a neshama, then it has equal status of the mother, then the doctor has a quandary, and the doctor cannot choose one over the other. It doesn't say over here, by the way, who to save. It just says that you can't, the doctor can't save one over the other. So the commentaries speak about what should the doctor at the end do, right? Because it's not, it is not, the Mishnah is not clear. All the Mishnah says is you have no right to kill the child if the child puts its head out. That's what so Rashi says the reasoning as to why the mother's life overrides the child is because the child is not considered yet a nefesh. So many commentaries, modern commentaries, point to this Rashi and say, aha, from here we see that abortion is not murder. Whatever you're going to call it, it's not murder. Because since the mother's life overrides the child's life, the child's fetus state, so that's a proof that according to halacha, the child is of an inferior status before it's born. Inferior status, not yet an nefesh. That's why the mother has a full rights to being a living creature, and the baby is not yet. So therefore, the mother overrides. Rambam actually takes a little bit. Rambam's a doctor. He takes a little bit of a different approach, explaining why is it that the mother's life overrides the child's life when the child is in the embryonic state. And the Rambam says no. The reason over here why the mother's life overrides the child's life is because though the child is, even though it's a situation the child didn't choose, but at the end of the day, the child is threatening the mother. So because the child is this kind of is sucking the life out of the mother, so the child is like a rodef. Right? The mother was living a nice, quiet life, and everything was good, right? So the child came into the mother's life, and it changed the whole status quo. It changed everything. So the child is the one that intervened over here and created a situation where the mother's life is at risk. So even though the Gemara afterwards says, who poos it a little bit, because the Gemara says after the child is born that from heaven it's a heavenly situation. It's not the child by choice doing it. So it's different than a child on the street. But nonetheless, Rambam feels that the reason why it seems like from the Rambam that they're both equal. The mother and the child are equal in terms of their rights to life. But the child forfeits it because the child is a rodef. So the child is almost like a murderer coming into the mother's life and sucking the life out of the mother. So since the child is the aggressor in a roundabout way, so therefore the child forfeits it for it. So based on this Rashi and Rambam, you have many, many commentaries that came out of from this whole debate in this piece of Gemara. Rashi saying no, that the reason why we abort the child is because the child is not yet considered alive, whereas the mother has full rights to life. Meaning a fetus is less than living. Whereas according to Rambam, No, they're both equal living. Just one is a pursuer. And that's why they forfeit their rights to life. So based on this little piece of Gemara here, how Rashi and Rambam learning that, there's a whole debate as to what is the prohibition of abortion. Because is it murder, abortion? So according to Rashi, it would appear that not. And that's the reason why the mother's life overrides the child. Because the child is not yet a living creature. So it's not yet a living creature. You can't call it murder when you abort the child. But according to the Rambam, who says, no, they're equal, just the child is a murderer here, is the pursuer. That's why we kill. But according to Rambam, it's, the child is 100% alive. It's just the situation where the child is pursuing the mother. And that's why you're allowed to. You're allowed to ask questions, by the way, because, it's just...
So, Rabbi, what about in the instance of psychological damage, like rape?
Let's wait, but hold off on rape for a minute. Let's talk about just the logic of the actual thing of it. So, in Judaism, there is no doubt that abortion is prohibited. In fact, in the 7 Noahide laws, the very, very beginning of the Torah, it speaks about Maki Nefesh Hadam Be'adam, the striking of a human being, of the soul of a Be'adam, through another person. That's how the Torah describes murder at the very, very beginning in Parshas Noach, Parshas Bereshis, beginning of the Torah. When he speaks already to the Noachides and to the first people of the world, after the great sin of Cain and Abel, first murder takes place, and God says, Maki nefesh adam ba'adam mos yumos. If when a man strikes another man through another man, he shall surely die. So the Gemara asks, why does it say Maki nefesh adam be'adam?
Fetus.
Be'adam means in a man, not through a man. So it reads, he who strikes a man in a man. The Gemara says, what's a man in a man? Play on the letters, but that's what it is. Be'adam, in a man. What is that? Who is that person? That is the fetus. What person is within a person? That's a fetus. So Maki Nefesh Adam Ba'adam, that's also considered a form of murder, or definitely something which is prohibited. So we know that in Jewish law, abortion is prohibited. The question is, why is it prohibited? Is it prohibited because it is a form of murder? Or is it prohibited because the destruction of all forms of life is not allowed? The Torah is against cutting down trees for no reason at all. Right? You're not allowed to kill an animal. Doesn't mean that it's human life, right? So, according to Jewish law, you're not allowed to waste seed for no reason at all. It's also a form of it's more of a moral thing as opposed to a murder, right? But there's a morality about you're not destroying life. God created a planet, you have to keep it intact, right? So there is a great debate amongst the great rabbis of the last 1,000 years or so as to what is the nature of we know there is a prohibition of abortion, but is it murder or it's something else? And depending on how we define abortion, how we explain this prohibition against abortion, will help us in figuring out what to do in extenuating circumstances. If it is murder, we're obviously much more strict. And murder is murderous. It's a terrible thing, right? It's the worst kind of sin that possibly could be. If it's of the other kind of sins, just wanton destruction of life, we might be a little bit more lenient in those things. And then also we have a question of at what stage within the pregnancy. The Talmud, it speaks about the before 40 days. It's not yet considered a developed life. And there is a concept of viability, degrees of viability, etc., etc. I'm not going to get into that because that's a long conversation. But I'm trying to focus a little bit from this piece of Talmud and the understanding of it, of why it is that a child is allowed to be aborted when the mother's life is in danger. So there's the approach of Rashi that says the reason why the mother overrides the child is because the child is not alive before it's born. That would connote that it's not murder. If you look at the way the Rambam says, no, they're both life, just one is a pursuer, which is the child, then that means that a regular abortion, when the child is not a pursuer, would be a form of murder. Because it is a life. And like just getting to Edna's question, you asked the question before. But before we get even to the situation of rape and incest, mysis, I mean, the big questions is the mother's life is in danger. That we know clearly that the mother's life overrides the child. What about the mother's health is in danger? Okay, let's say the doctor says the mother's going to have the child, the mother's going to go blind. Or the mother's going to go insane. Her mental health, let's say, is in danger. Mm-hmm. You can have the physical health, or you can have the mental health. You know, she's going to crack up if she has a child. Right?
Yeah.
Or, I'm just giving you all the possibilities.
Circumstances at home. A parent could threaten the kid, kick them out. You know, what is, you know, in terms of, is the mother in danger if the father's going to throw her out?
Right, things like that. Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's a volatile situation, a volatile family. Yeah. The rabbi knows the family very well, and he knows they're going to have another child. They barely coped with the first 3 children. A 4th child is going to take them over the deep end, right? There's going to be abuse for sure. Abuse is going to come out of the situation, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying. That kind of an abusive house. There's going to be a lot of destruction.
Pain and suffering.
Pain and suffering, right? Or that's, you know, and then you have sometimes people expand their reasoning, you know, they can't afford a child, right? So what we can't afford, there'll be a lot of stress because stress for the parents, right? They can't afford the child, they're poor. Another child is going to come with a whole budget, and Martin Lipworth comes to them and told them about the other 3 kids, how much it takes to raise a child, how much money each child costs, right? So they say, hey, we have a 4th child. We just heard how much every child needs for tuition, college, and university, and right. And now a 4th child, we're going over our budget. We're finished. This is a suicidal situation, right? So every one of these situations obviously have to be taken into consideration, but definitely. If abortion is a murderous thing, you're much more strict. It's a case of murder. Who cares if you can't buy a car or whatever, right? You're killing somebody. You don't have a right to say because of your money you can't. But if it's more of a moral situation, a moral reasoning, that to save life in the world, and it's not considered murder, we're a little bit more lenient in these things. And then you have Edna's case over there, where another reasoning might be, which Judaism doesn't bring onto the table, is rape. Judaism doesn't. That's not a halacha. The halacha is only if the mother's life is in danger, you're allowed to perform an abortion. It's clear. In other religions, they say it's the mother's life and rape and things like that, right? And a child, let's say that's born in an adulterous situation. So there was one response that came out from a rabbi somewhere in the 15th century or 16th century, that there was a woman that committed adultery, and the rabbi allowed the abortion because he said if the Beth Din was here, the mother would have been given the death penalty. So if there's a death penalty put in place, it says you're supposed to kill the mother with the fetus. You don't wait the 9 months so that the mother doesn't suffer for the 9 months waiting for her to be out. In Judaism, there's no death row. You have to immediately implement it because you're not allowed to make a person suffer thinking about their death in 8 months from now. So it says you kill the mother with the fetus. So the rabbis came up with this novel explanation. He said, today we don't have the death penalty, obviously, for adultery or things like that. But would there have been a Beth Din, they would have allowed the mother to be killed. Thus, the child would have also been killed. So therefore, you're allowed to do the abortion. Sort of a rabbi's, expansive ideas. So he came up with that idea in the case of adultery. but you talk about rape, which was brought before the question. Rape is if it's caught right at the very beginning. Remember, I said that before 40 days, we're a little bit more lenient in halacha, even in halacha. Right. Even if you say it's murder, right when it's conception, if things are done immediately, there are many leniencies within the halachic process to spare the girl of the embarrassment or whatever else would come together with that situation. So, but yeah, go ahead.
So if the Torah says it's forbidden, and someone does it, can the mother be forgiven?
Well,
or is it not?
If it depends on the level. Look, like I say, if it's murder, then it's a much stricter sort of approach to it. If it's just about saving life and things like that, or maintaining life in the world, not wasting seed, it said those kind of concepts. Then, if the mother's health is in danger, we're pretty lenient. If the mother's well-being is being threatened, or her hearing or her vision or things like that, most rabbis will be lenient, especially if it's in the early phases of the. One of the big questions is morality, which sort of it's in a way it's personal also, but one of the biggest times that women are coming to ask for permission to have an abortion is after the amniocentesis, which is usually in like the 5th month, the 4th, 5th month. So when the child is already pretty much developed. And it's at that point that they find out that the child has certain issues in the test. They'll find out maybe the child is a Tay-Sachs carrier, or the child maybe has Down syndrome, things like that. You can find out that 4th, 5th month. Today, actually, science is moving the bar back, that they're able to find out a lot of things even earlier. But in the last 20, 30 years, that's when it was. That's when they found out. They would go for an amnio, which was a test that they take some blood from the child's umbilical cord, and then they would find out certain problems with the child at that point. And basically, that's a question then of whether or not you're allowed to abort. Again, if you say it's murder, it's much more severe. The other thing a little bit less, but this is already pretty much developed. And today, with a lot of the Christian groups, what they're really showing that these videos of a child already pretty early on, they're already pretty developed. But there is always the argument that the child might be developed, but they're not salvageable yet. But we do. And there's viability already, I don't know, in 6th to 7th month, they could save already a child. A lot of these kids are preemies. Hey, can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
There's there's some bad, sometimes it says I am unstable. I just saw a little, so I want to know if I'm an unstable teacher. But you understand that this is quite and a lot of the questions of abortion really start then, the 5th month. Like I said already today, they're bringing back the science is developing. They're able to save a child already almost at that point. Maybe not exactly.
So, Rabbi, in terms of, I know that in the ultra-Orthodox circles, they don't do an amniocentesis.
Right.
It's a case of what I don't know.
Because of that reason. Because of that reason, because they say that whatever it's going to be, they're not going to do anything anyways. So, what's the? I mean, they don't do the amnio, but there are many other things that need to be found. So that's why they take. There's a lot of testing on the kids that are what do you call those pictures of the child?
Yeah, the ultrasounds.
Ultrasound and other.
So if they were to discover, say, something that's not Down syndrome, say a spina bifida or
even Down syndrome, spinal, whatever, all those things. Most rabbis in the Orthodox community would already not allow at that point. There are some, like I say, there obviously is I'm just showing you that within halacha there is a spectrum. It's not so, Rashi, like I was saying over here, right? It all goes back to that, and depending on what approach you take, would really define as to how you paskin, right? So there are many things that are taken into consideration about the family, the parents. There have been cases even in the ultra-Orthodox community where they allowed for an abortion, not necessarily the people to go forward with that, right? But they were allowed. So as a whole, the Orthodox community does not allow abortions at that point. But there is isolated response where it was allowed based on all the different factors which I just threw onto the table. So nothing is totally black and white in the subject.
So there's an issue going on in the States with the alt-right and the lack of abortion issue, where I think there was a rabbi or a scholar who wanted to sue the government for religious discrimination on the grounds of banning abortion.
Right. So the thing is, so let's just look at the Roe v. Wade. It is a little bit, as much as people think it's sort of a liberal concept, but it's a lot of what I'm telling you right now is sort of not way off. At the very, very beginning, there's more leniency. In the middle, there's a little bit more strictness, and then at the very end, it's very strict. But I think what's happening now is as viability is becoming more possible. So everybody will agree that if you could save a child, in the olden days, they couldn't save a child.
Yeah.
Until the child put his head out, right?
Yeah.
That was when you had you said, okay, then he's already born. Right? Before that was nothing. Couldn't save the child. Hardly. But now, with such advancement in science, even though the child is not yet breathing, but if you just let the kid poke its head out, he'll breathe. So it might not, even according to Rashi, who says a child is not alive till they come out of the womb, but that might have been back then, where until you came out, you weren't really alive. But today, with science, the ability to put the child in the incubators and all that, they could save children already from 5-6 months onward. So you could say, yeah, well, let's just be very technical about it to say the child is not yet alive until they're born. Okay, but you could save a child, right? If you opened up the mother's womb at any given point from 5 or 6 months on. So the argument now is the more it's just like at the end of life, we're able to save people much more. So because of that, pulling a plug is much more of an issue than it was years ago. Years ago, just people died. There was no same way at the beginning. They're moving the bar back, right? They're able to you don't need so much the mother anymore. So one could argue that perhaps as science is advancing and the mother is becoming less essential, aborting a child even at the very early stage could be tantamount to murder. Look, it's a big subject. Like I said, this class over here is not to go through the final halacha. I'm just trying to show you how Gemara and learning the Gemara, you have this whole subject of whatever they're discussing now, Roe v. Wade. It's all in there. The wisdom is all there already for thousands of years. And it's now a matter of applying it to the current situation. But the thing is like this, that I'm right now at 3 a.m. and my brain is not working so well. I'm going to ask if you could excuse me because, What?
Right.
So no. We already, what time? Oh, it's already 10. No, we gave it's a 40-minute class. But
are you saying you're unstable again?
I'm unstable again, yes. I'm in the jet lag mode.
So it's a good time to end.
Yeah. So just whatever. I can wrap up. If anybody has any more questions, you're welcome to ask now. But I finished this piece of Gemara. It's an independent piece of Gemara. So we did so far. I gave you a little background, euthanasia. Now the abortion issue, I gave you a little bit. And Mitzvah Shem, we will continue with the ethical Gemaras. Every week we'll learn another little piece of Gemara. By the time you finish, you'll be ethicists. They'll hire you in Washington, D.C. to figure out how to.
That's the trouble. They never asked us, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, we don't shuffle along enough.
We're not old enough.
Okay, so we finished the piece of Gemara. Okay, so I wish everybody a good Shabbos, a good Yom.
Good Shabbos, Rabbi. Nice to see you. Nice to see you back.
Okay, to be continued.
Okay, bye.
I hope you manage with the snow.
Yes, good luck.